and it's time for Lefties Losing It. So much of what is wrong in the West can be traced back to the warped thinking, the suicidally stupid self-loathing of the awfuls. That's the affluent white female leftists, the Karens who not only vote left, but they're determined to make a nuisance of themselves, pushing their twisted ideology. Even a yoga studio is not safe from the madness. Watch these mad banshees attack some poor workers at a Minneapolis yoga studio because they want these workers to issue formal statements against ICE, US Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Go. Say them out loud and for the camera for all my viewers. Let's hear it. Why are you being silent? Let's hear it, Delaney, loud and proud, baby. You want to say it? F***ing say it. Why? Okay, let's go. It's an and a well. You should have well-rehearsed corporate action and words ready to go.
Yes, the poor workers at the yoga studio must issue statements against ICE. Now let's hear from the crazy Karen who led that protest.
Because I know that the set people don't make a lot of money, and I always want to be able to support people who have to clean up. One of the people in the class said to me, you know what, we shouldn't put our weights away today. We should let corporate cleaning it up since they're here to see how everything is. And that's exactly what we did. So rather than putting all the weights back and organizing like I normally would, we just left them on the floor.
Yes, a brave and stunning stand by the yoga mums there. And instead of standing up for their workers, that studio has caved into the mob and is now putting up anti-ICE signs in its studios in Minneapolis. Absolutely pathetic. Let's check in now on an activist using the medium of dance and knitted jumpers to protest against President Trump and ICE. Wow, I can't see how President Trump can possibly recover from that. Let's hear now from Sunny Hostin, the co-host of The View, who makes some incredible claims here about the world's richest man, Elon Musk.
I think we need to call a thing when we're talking about someone like Elon Musk. He has trafficked in white supremacy on the internet, on social media, on X for quite some time. He sparked some controversy just on January 8th, calling for white solidarity and warning that white men would be slaughtered if they became a minority. He also posted in September that white people are a rapidly diminishing minority of the global population. And in December, he said that the South African government is super racist against anyone who isn't black. And he has also said that he is not African, that he is actually of British and English descent. And so we know what this is. He is a white supremacist. In my view, he is a racist.
So Elon Musk is a racist and a white supremacist for simply noting facts that Sunny does not like. I've got to say one thing to Sunny Hostin. It's not Elon Musk whose family has a history of being slave owners.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Let's hear now from a trans activist who thinks the real victim, the first victim of a horrific mass shooting in Canada is the killer himself because the killer was trans.
The first victim of this tragedy was the shooter. And you can disagree all you want. But that person did not just decide one day that it was the day. It was the day that they could not take it any longer.
Let's bring in filmmaker and commentator Ami Horowitz. Ami, this is the latest mass shooting attributed to a trans or non-binary killer, or as the Canadian authorities call him, the gun person. God forbid they should misgender a mass killer.
That includes the deceased gun person.
Okay. And then separately, do you know the gun person's relationship to...
Ami, what more do we know about this gunman, Jesse Van Rutselaar, and this horrific crime?
Yeah, you stole one of my notes. I mean, how Orwellian, gun person. That is, God, that is chilling and crazy. Yes, we know this was a trans person. First of all, look, as we now have to say, we talk about gun laws and what their effects are ultimately on shootings. Canada has one of the strictest gun laws, certainly in the world, and yet this is a mass shooting that we've had. Look, if the gunman, Rita, if the gunman wasn't a straight white male, it's the job of the authorities to hide their identity. That's the way it works, right? It's a straight white male. We'll identify him all the live long day. But if it's not, so if it's a trans person, we're gonna do whatever we can to obscure what the identity is, right? And look, I had, like I always do, I do show prep, and I did my research with AI, and we always have that fun AI stories. And I asked, well, what % of school shootings we've had in the last 5 years have been from trans people? And it refused to give me a number. It kept saying it's a very, very low number. I swear it would not. I had to list every single one of the last 5 years mass school shootings and individually go through them. And what's the answer? There's been 5 in the last 5 years, and 2 of the 5, 40%, have been people who are trans or non-binary. Yet
since we last talked about this, I went and checked that out for myself. I asked the not just ChatGPT but Grok, and asked precisely what you were talking about, to list the number of mass shootings in the recent years that have involved a trans shooter or a non-binary shooter, and it just refuses to do it. When you then give it a number of events, it will acknowledge it and repeat those to you, but it will not compile a list, which is extraordinary, because I could ask it to compile any other sort of list and it will normally do it. But there is just this determination not to acknowledge that perhaps there is a problem here. Now let's move along to the House of Representatives today, passing a massive election integrity bill, 218 to 213 votes. We've talked about this before, Army, about how popular this policy is. Around 85% of Americans back voter ID, but the Democrats continue to oppose it. They voted against the Save America Act, Army.
Yeah, and this happens over and over and over again. All the Democrats voted against it in the House, save one. Look, there's a reason why they continue to push universal mail-in balloting and ballot harvesting and voting all year long and against voter ID. And by the way, also voting for non-citizens to vote. I know. They all say that's not true. That's a scurrilous lie. It absolutely 100% is true. In New York, in Chicago, in San Francisco, in DC, and other cities, they have voted to have non-citizens vote, okay? I'm sorry, that's the reality. They want to try to get away from that all they want, but it's just not possible. Look, Rita, last week we talked about the reason why I made that voter ID video, because somebody voted for my dad. What I didn't tell you, the second part of that story, which ties into this, is that I took a photo of that and I sent that to the California Board of Elections. I go, look, you claim there's no voter fraud. Here is an absolute clear indication of voter fraud. You know how quickly they got back to me? They never got back to me. They don't care. They don't want to know. That's the reality. Look, Rita, in virtually every Western European country, you have to show ID to vote. That's just part of what it is. They don't want to safeguard elections because they call safeguarding elections voter suppression. That's the Democratic Party. Okay, the reality is they want this problematic issue to be in our voting because they feel whatever. We can go into, that's a whole different discussion on why they don't want voter integrity. I think they think it's going to help elect Democrats, okay? And this, Rita, is the party of democracy.
It's the only answer, Army. That's the only answer. Why else would you campaign against, vote against a policy that poll after poll shows around 85% of Americans back? And we brought you the CNN coverage of that issue last week. The polling on this is clear. This is almost it's not even an 80-20 issue. It's close to a 90-10 issue. And yet the Democrats are staunchly against voter ID. Now, Talking about Democrats, Democrat heartland of California has lost another billionaire. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg is fleeing Gavin Newsom's California and heading to Florida. Army. He has purchased a massive waterfront mansion in Miami and he is expected to live in it. It's not supposed to be a holiday home. They're expecting him to move to the red state in April. Why are so many people leaving California for places like Florida and Texas and Tennessee? It's a bit of a theme there.
Yeah, I can't tell if that was a rhetorical question or a real question, Rita. Well, I mean, California is it's unbelievable. Here's the data. Okay, in the last 10 years, 10 million people have left California, including dozens of billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg, taking with them all their job creation, all their innovation. It's all going out the door to the states who are welcoming people who want to create wealth, okay? Not California. You know, the greatest stat of all is that if you want to rent a U-Haul one way from California to Texas, it is 4 times more expensive in that direction than Texas coming back to, because no one is doing that. Look, this hurts my heart. It does. As you know, I am a long time, I live in New York, but I am a LA boy. I am a California boy at heart, okay? And it pains me to no end to see the destruction of my state. And one of the main drivers of the ultra wealthy leaving is because they've been pushing, and now they're about to possibly pass, a 5% wealth tax on the ultra rich. Now, to be clear what that is, you're talking about real estate holdings for businesses, you're talking about ownership of businesses, and you're talking about stock portfolios. And for those who don't understand what that means, that's not an extra 5% tax on your earnings. What that means is if you own a business that you haven't realized its gains because you're pouring all the money back into the business, if the business is valued at $1 billion, right? And I was told there wasn't going to be any math on this interview, but I guess there's going to be. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars that you have to pay because you have a business, or if you have stockholders, if you haven't realized the gains in your stock. It doesn't matter if you don't have that money. You have to pay that in taxes. No one can do that, okay? That is a horrific albatross to have on you. And what that has done is driven people away. Now, they've tried wealth taxes all over the world, and they have all failed spectacularly, okay? And to be clear again, the rich don't pay their fair share, right? How often do you hear that? Okay, a couple of statistics, which I think is really, really helpful here, is that the top 1%, I'm going to read the notes because these numbers are important. The top 1% of earners, right, they pay 40% of all taxes. They earn 20% of all earnings, yet pay 40%. The bottom 50% pay 3% of all taxes, but earn 13%, okay? The bottom 50, I'm sorry these stats, but they're important. The bottom 50% pay 4% of their income in taxes, okay? And the top 1%, they pay 27% of their income that they get in taxes. So you tell me, the rich don't pay their fair share? The rich are carrying this country, okay? And what you're doing is you're trying to make them flee and leave. And by the way, if you do this writ large across the country, they're going to leave the country also because they just simply can't afford to do it.
As long as when they move to those red states, and we're seeing that's a similar trend from New York as well to places like Texas and Florida and Tennessee, just don't keep voting the same way that you have, because a lot of these people fleeing California keep voting Democrat in their new home state. Army Horowitz, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Always a pleasure.
Joining me now is celebrity and royal commentator Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, let's start with Prince Harry. An insider has confirmed to royal expert Rob Shooter that Prince Harry is now charging a small fee of $50,000 US. Doesn't sound small, but it is for a prince. This is for speaking appearances. This is a far cry from the millions he was charging per speech when he and Meghan ditched the royal family back in 2020. It sounds like the Duke's rivers of gold have dried up, Kinsey.
I mean, actions have consequences. I really have a hard time taking someone seriously that quits nearly everything he starts, doesn't get along with anyone in his family, and casually and enthusiastically discusses their drug use. Truly, what does Prince Harry bring to the table? I mean, it's that royal proximity, which, thanks to Jeffrey Epstein, has even taken a hit. I'm surprised anyone would pay him anything. Seashells.
Seashells. Now, historian and author Andrew Lowney has said that King Charles should abdicate and hand the throne over to Prince William to save the monarchy and wipe the slate clean amid the continuing fallout from the Epstein files. Here's what he had to say.
Do you think that the clamour could literally end King Charles's reign?
Yes, I think it could. I mean, I think they seem unable to learn the lessons of the past. They've tried to shut the story down for years, to the extent of issuing legal threats against journalists, strong arm pressure to deny them access to royal interviews, etc. So the king has known about this. The Queen protected Andrew. The easiest thing would be for the king to abdicate.
Kinsey, there is widespread dissatisfaction with how the palace has dealt with this. They've known about some of these allegations for around 15 years or more.
You're right. I mean, people are very angry. There are certain people within the palace that have known about the allegations for quite some time. But are those people angry with the appropriate monarch? I spoke to Tom Bauer today, author of Rebel Prince, about King Charles, who told me that Charles has never gotten along with Andrew. They were never close. He would have no reason to know what Andrew was up to behind closed doors, who he was associating with. This is an inherited mess, and the Queen's advisors should have done a better job of protecting the future of the monarchy by being more ruthless towards Andrew sooner. I really have sympathy for the king here.
You would think the future king would be briefed about these sorts of allegations. If people were coming forward and threatening legal action, were saying these rumours were circulating, surely the future monarch would be advised, given that at some point they're going to be taking on this responsibility. It seems a very bizarre way of running things at the palace. Joe Rogan, on the other hand, has revealed that in 2017, he received an unwanted invitation to meet Jeffrey Epstein via one of the guests on his show. Here he is discussing what happened with Cheryl Hines.
I'm in the files for not going, because Jeffrey Epstein was trying to meet with me. This was like 2017. One of my guests was trying to get me to meet him. I was like, are you high? Like, what the are you talking about?
Joe Rogan is a long way from the former Prince Andrew. He could not be tempted to meet with Epstein, Kinsey. I don't think Joe Rogan is the type of man who can be bought or is susceptible to the likes of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, and this is just a friendly reminder that just because someone is mentioned within the DOJ email drop, it doesn't mean they're actually guilty of anything Epstein related. He was pursuing a relationship with Rogan. Rogan wasn't interested, and Rogan is there still name dropped. I'm so glad he told that story to put that distance between him and the convicted sex offender, because some people can't separate fact from fiction, and these documents have made people crazy.
Absolutely. And the same, you could argue for Donald Trump. His name's in the files, but it's in the files confirming that he was talking to authorities about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, encouraging them to investigate and charge them. This was before Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of being a pedophile. Okay, Kinsey, let's talk about the Winter Olympics. And Norwegian biathlete Sturla Holm Lægrid has caused quite a stir after publicly and tearfully admitting to cheating on his girlfriend following his bronze medal win. He had plenty to say, Kinsey. Do we know much more about the status of this relationship? Has the ex-girlfriend taken him back?
Absolutely not. She's not buying the grand gesture. The Olympic medalist's ex says it's hard to forgive after his cheating, accusing him of turning their breakup into an Olympic spectacle. According to the tabloid VG that spoke to her, she stressed she wanted to remain anonymous. She says even a worldwide declaration of love isn't enough to repair the betrayal.
Good on her. I've got to say, I don't know who this woman is, but I am a fan. And I had a look online at some of the commentary, and I've got to say the sisterhood are telling her to stay away because this guy could not stay faithful, Kinsey, for even 3 months. He explained in depth what happened here. Apparently met the love of his life 6 months ago, cheated on her within 3 months, and she kicked him to the curb. Now, I want to ask you about the TV ratings around the Super Bowl. We heard a lot of fake news about it being the most watched halftime show ever, but that doesn't seem to be accurate because there seems to be quite a dip in the audience numbers. Nearly 10 million people stopped watching the Super Bowl during the halftime show. Tell me about what these figures reveal, Kinsey.
Yeah, I mean, the halftime show fumbled. Samba TV specifically reports only 26.5 million households watched, down 39% from last year's Kendrick Lamar set. Footage from inside the stadium, which I know you've seen on social media, shows a crowd that appeared very underwhelmed. And analysts noted viewership dropped to 88% during the performance, suggesting a notable chunk of the audience tuned out. And that's one of many organizers of these types of statistics. I just think it's the most significant one.
Now, Kinsey, Jill Zarin, I think that's how you pronounce her name. I've never heard of her, I've got to say, but she was left stunned by her sudden firing from E's upcoming reunion series, The Golden Life, after she savaged Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance, branding it the worst halftime show ever. How can that get you sacked? Surely you are entitled to that opinion.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this new E show is basically it's a reboot of The Housewives from Bravo. I'm actually pretty shocked by this story. Reality show housewives aren't necessarily known for socially acceptable behavior. These are the same women that flip dinner tables over. And a source close to Jill asked, if someone was offended, why couldn't this have been a teachable moment for the program? Why couldn't this have been a storyline? I completely agree. We don't debate anymore. That's not healthy. This woman was just fired for saying what half the country was complaining about. And I think it will hurt this reboot.
Well, if it's the same mob behind the Housewives franchise, I'm not shocked because they are super woke, super left, and obviously they don't tolerate a diversity of views. Kinsey Schofield, thank you so much for your time tonight.